Hi, I'm Diana Giselle Yanez, host of Highly Sensitive Money. I'm a money coach, certified financial planner, and a highly sensitive person who brings money and social justice together. If you're someone who feels deeply, can endlessly think through how one decision affects everything else, or has ever struggled with all the things that traditional financial thinking leaves out, you're in the right place. In this show, I chat with highly sensitive people on how they handle their money, and with money experts on how they cultivate social justice in their work. Questions? Please go to allthecolors.net and schedule a free 30-minute call. And I'm happy to share resources on investment management, money coaching, workshops, or anything else money and social justice related. Join us in this episode as we explore money and sensitivity while honoring that all of our well-being is interconnected. Today's conversation is with Christine Farrugia, an executive coach who helps leaders and mid-career professionals navigate career transitions and build work they truly love. In this conversation, Christine shares the windy route she took to becoming a coach, something she'd been wanting to do since her early 20s. We dive into the relationship between money and entrepreneurship, exploring how starting a business can fundamentally shift your relationship with money, especially when you've grown up with financial instability. Christine shares her coaching practice around helping clients identify what they truly love in their careers and not just what feels possible. And we talk about the ongoing work of untangling our self-worth from our productivity, our bank accounts, and how full our calendars are. Welcome, Christine, to Highly Sensitive Money. I'm really excited to have you here to share your story around money and social justice and sensitivity.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So to start off, could you share a little bit about your work and how it is that you arrived at it?
Yeah, so the work that I do now is I'm an executive coach. I work with leaders and mid-career professionals who either feel stuck in their work and want to make a change, or who just really want to advance on their leadership journey and continue to move up in their career. I came to this work, I think what I've always wanted to do. If you asked me when I was 22 years old, I would have said what I wanted to do. I would have said, I want to be a life coach, but then I would have said, that's not a real job and you can't make any money. So instead I went on a more traditional corporate path and I started in consulting and got an MBA and worked in the corporate world. I live in Canada, so in big Canadian corporations, and became an executive. And then mid-pandemic, I'd been this rising star at work, and then things started not going as well, which really reframed and set me down this path of like deep introspection, which led me back to figuring out that I maybe want to go back to where I started. And so I started doing coaching first on the side and then now do it full time. So I took a bit of a circuitous route to get here, but I've been enjoying this new career.
I love that. So 22-year-old you would have been thrilled to know that you finally did get to become a life coach.
Yes, exactly. Over 20 years later, I finally did it. But yeah, I think it's what I've always known that I wanted to be. I just took a while for me to figure that out and find the courage to actually do it.
Mm-hmm. And who ideally are like the people that you focus working on? Because those 20 years that you spent in corporate Canadian businesses, like they bring a lot of different things, right? Who is it that you specifically love working with?
I love working with two different types of folks. One is folks who are maybe myself several years ago, which was like you've worked in your career for 10, 15, 20 years and you've loved it. And then all of a sudden something has changed and you're feeling stuck and you're not sure that what the path you've been on is the right path for you. And I help them get clarity around what that path is to move forward and help them build the confidence to go after it. And then the other folks that I like to work with are folks in the corporate world who are usually they're folks who are newly promoted or who are really trying to stretch to the next level. And they've realized that what got them here won't get them there. And they really want a partner to help them level up their skills and their influence and their impact to be able to create a career that they really love.
All right. So you work with people who are either at a point in their career where they're like, I've loved what I've done and something's changed. It's time for me to make a bigger change. For people who have moved into a new position that's maybe bigger than what they've done before. And now they really want to thrive in that and want to have the setup ready for that.
Exactly. They want a partner to help them level up their leadership skills and figure out how to really thrive in this new, bigger role.
And I know that when we had our last conversation, there was something that led you to start questioning where you were, to really start this career pivot that reached the goals of your 22-year-old self. Can you tell us about those ethnographic studies that really changed things for you?
Yeah. So in one of my roles, I led a customer insights organization, and I decided to take the leadership team of the company into the homes of lower income Canadian moms, just to give a different perspective of the types of customers that we were servicing in our business. And so I went into all of these amazing women's homes and sat with them for 3 or 4 hours doing really in-depth ethnographic interviews. And my takeaway from these interviews with these 10 amazing women was that every single one of them was happier than me. And that hit me hard. Not that I thought I was better than them or anything in that way, but that I felt like on paper, right, I would have had a more quote unquote successful life by society's standards, right? Of like an executive job and a big income and a big team and all of these things. And I was like, but all these women seem more content, more satisfied and happier. And that made me be like, okay, what am I doing wrong? What am I missing? Where am I coming from? And that coupled with then a couple months later, things in my job not going as well, made me think about, okay, what really matters to me? And I realized that I'd been caught in this cycle of striving, right? I will be happy when I get the next promotion. I will be happy when my income hits this level. I will be happy when I have the next kid, whatever it is. And this like when then mentality. And what these women had was that they were happy and grateful for what they had, right? And I was never that way, because as soon as I accomplished a goal, the bar was raised. Like, so if I got promoted to a VP or a vice president, that'd be great for 2 weeks. And then I'd be like, but now I need to be a senior vice president. Now I need to be a C-suite executive. Now I need to be this. And so that really kickstarted my sort of journey of introspection, of figuring out what I really wanted to be. And also this idea of what is enough, right? Like for the longest time, there was never enough. Like you could always make more money. You could always have more things. You could always do whatever. And I'm still ambitious and I still like want to make money and all those things. But it was like this idea that like for a lot of these women, they would literally say, I have everything I need. And to me, that idea of everything you need is not actually income dependent. Obviously, there's a certain level where you can't meet your basic needs. But above that, it's, what is enough? And so that really did kickstart a big sort of chain of introspection that ultimately led to the career pivot that I did.
That's so interesting, right? To like on paper, be everywhere that you wanted to be. And then to recognize that what took you there, what took you to all of those places of success was also not allowing you to enjoy the success. Am I hearing you correctly?
100%. Exactly. It's like all the ambition and the drive, it often puts you in this idea of the bar will always get raised. It's like there's this book, The Gap and the Gain by Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan, and they talk about it as the gap and the gain. And so the gap is where you're always comparing yourself to your future self. And that's where I was comparing myself to this ideal CEO, massive earner person that I was trying to become. And I wasn't comparing myself, but to be in the gain, you compare yourself to your past self, right? And so I was always in the gap, comparing myself to the future self. And I had to learn to shift to be in the gain and be like, look how much progress you've made in the last year. Look how far you've come. Look at all the things that you used to wish for that you now have. And I really had to work to shift that mentality out of the gap into the gain, to use their framework, which I find a really helpful way of articulating what those women that I met were in. They were in the gain, and I was always living in the gap.
And did you read this book before or after the ethnographic studies?
Oh, after. Like probably a year or two after. And that gave me some of the language to be able to use to articulate it.
Okay, so you do these ethnographic studies, you start this introspection, there's something in you that's not sitting well. As you stay in what you know, which is like that ambition, that corporate, I keep wanting to say corporate America. Is that what they say in Canada?
Yeah, I mean, the corporate world is fine. Yeah, corporate America is fine.
People the American content, yes. To stay in corporate America and moving forward. And then reading this book, and that even led to more introspection, more questioning of, is more success on paper actually translating to a joyful life?
Exactly, right? And that book is really what sort of showed me that you can be very grateful for what you have and want more. And I think for the longest time, the idea of being grateful for what you had felt like it would hinder me, right? Like it would remove that drive if I was happy with what I had. And that book showed me you can be ambitious and grateful. And both of those things can live together. And I think sometimes we're taught that, or society shows us that just You have to have blind ambition and just keep growing and growing. And that dissatisfaction is actually what makes you successful. But that book reframed that for me, that you can be grateful for how far you've come and want more for yourself. And both those things can become true, but it's not coming from a place of lack. It's coming from a place of abundance.
Yeah, from maybe a place of curiosity, right? Because when I think of how corporate greed works and how, like, when people are insatiable, I think of this Buddhist principle called the hungry ghost, where it's this realm, right? Where like people have a pin-sized mouth and like a black hole for a belly, and they actually can't get enough nutrition, right? So when I think about what we're doing to the planet and how we're devastating it, it makes me think like we're all just hungry ghosts, just consuming, not recognizing the impact of that consumption on ourselves, on like our inability to rest, our inability to enjoy the now, and on the wider planet around us.
Yeah, 100%. And I think exactly like it happens at an individual level, and then it obviously happens at a broader, like, national societal level as well, right? This idea of like just always living in that gap and always thinking that more and more will be what makes you feel better, feel good. And in my experience, that's a mindset shift that I had to undergo, right? In order to get a deeper level of satisfaction.
Yeah. And as a coach, when you're working with people who are still in corporate America and they are either navigating a change or growing into a bigger leadership position, do you bring your own experience of, you also have to remember to enjoy what you have now into those coaching conversations?
Oh, 100%. Because I think like that, even if you don't aspire to leave or you want to keep growing your career, you can grow that career in a way that feels fulfilling and satisfying, right? And that makes you feel happy in the moment. Or you can build that career in a way that's like that happiness is delayed until the promotion, until the raise, until the new project, until the whatever. And actually, as a leader, if you can lead from a place of being grateful for what you have, right? And lead from a place of my team is enough and I'm working to make them better and we can be enough as we are, you're going to show up as a leader in a different way than if you're always coming from a place of when this happens, then we can rest. When this happens, then we can take a vacation. When this happens, that, right? That's how people lead to burnout. And so I definitely bring it in when I'm working with leaders in the corporate world as well.
And for your own like personal transition, what's it been like in the past? When did you start your coaching business? Was that 2025 or 2024?
I started it on the side in like 2023, and then I went full time in the fall of 2024. So it's been just over a year.
Just over a year. What's been the most surprising about moving away from the corporate world and now really embracing like enjoying today?
Yeah, I think the biggest shift has been it's a constant practice, I guess, if I'm being totally honest about it. I think it comes up a lot with my clients where you think if you change your environment, like you change jobs, you change companies, you change whatever, you'll like magically be a different person. And that's not true. Even if you make a completely 180 shift like I did and become an entrepreneur and start your own coaching business and whatever, for me, it's still a daily practice, right? To celebrate my wins, to feel grateful, to do all of those things. And then to be there to help support my clients in doing that is also a way of deepening my own learning, right? About it. But it hasn't just been like, oh, you make this shift, you leave the corporate world, you do this, and like those old habits go away, right? Like old habits die hard is an expression for a reason. That it is a daily practice of remembering to be grateful, remembering how far you've come, remembering the satisfaction from the call you had with the client 2 days ago, whatever it is, it's a practice.
Definitely, for sure. It's making me think of when people move to a different city, right? And they're like, I'm in a different city. Everything's going to be different, but you are still there with you. So whatever.
100%.
Yeah, whatever your habits were before.
Yeah. And a lot of people come to me, they're like, oh, I have to change jobs because I work too much and the workload is too high, the pressure is too high. And a lot of our work is unpacking that you can go anywhere and you can create that environment for yourself. Yes, there's higher pressure work environments and lower, but if you're someone who's wired to feed off of that pressure, like you're going to create that for yourself wherever you go.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's really doing the inner work to understand why that's happening and how you want to be. And then you can change jobs if you still want to, but just changing jobs isn't going to be the Band-Aid, isn't going to magically change things. It's just a Band-Aid.
I'm hearing you really help position people into inner change so that they can make that outer change possible. And who knows, it's like when our insights change, sometimes our external world, even without moving, even without changing anything, will respond differently to the energy that we're bringing in.
Oh, 1,000%. Like your mindset dictates so much of how you see the world. And so, like the analogy I use is if you want to get pregnant, all of a sudden all around you is pregnant people because you're thinking about it, but you wouldn't have noticed them like 2 years before or 5 years before, right? Or you bought a new car and then you see that same new car everywhere you go. It's whatever's on your mind is what you focus on. And so are you looking for how things are working out for you, or are you looking out for how things are not, right? And that'll really shape your worldview to whatever's happening around you.
Yeah. And one of the things that I love exploring in this podcast is like how the financial background of people has shaped the work that they do today, how it's shaped their point of view. Are they doing the same thing? Have they gone the 180, the 180% differently? I'd love to hear about the financial background of your childhood and how that may affect the work that you're choosing to do today.
Yeah. So I grew up in a pretty affluent household in Toronto. I went to private school. I didn't want for things when I was growing up, but my father was an entrepreneur. So there were some ups and downs that happened in that journey. And you could feel the tension between the higher years and the lower years. You would notice it even as a kid, the years we'd go on a fancy vacation and then the years where things would be tightened up at home or other things, not in an extreme way, but in a way that was still noticeable as a kid. And then when I was a teenager, my parents had made some decisions that were prioritizing money over family in certain ways. And so I do think that I definitely, at least earlier in my career, followed in those footsteps of building a career, trying to maximize wealth and all of those things. And I think the career pivot has really been focused on, while I still aspire to build my business, I'm not saying I did this career pivot as a financial decision primarily, but I think what this pivot has led me to is realizing it's also okay to take risks. I think earlier in my career, I was prioritizing safety. I think sometimes because of the volatility that I saw, and in some cases that gave me the worldview of sometimes you have to choose money over family, or it's a choice. And the work that I've been doing more recently is it's not a choice. You can choose both. You can be a present mom and you can make a lot of money, and both of those things can be true, and they're not opposed to each other. But also the work I've been doing, the inner work but it's also okay to take a risk. The safety is an illusion, and you can make all the decisions for safety or what you think will make you feel safe or what you think will impress other people or whatever. But if they're not really satisfying to you, then you are actually taking a risk. You're just taking a risk to yourself and not a risk to some of those external things.
They're taking a risk that you may not enjoy your life.
Exactly. And that risk looks less obvious externally, right? Externally, people might see the car you drive, the house you live in, the whatever, but they don't see how you feel. And what are you willing to trade off?
Healing. And I also hear you just growing what you believe is possible, right? You can have a lucrative career and be a present parent.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And that's not always easy to do. It requires effort, right? But I think for a long time, I felt there was an implicit trade-off there. And I'm realizing for myself, you can create a career that works for you however you want it, however you want it to work. But it's also defining what does success mean to you and what is enough, right? A lot of my clients come to me and they want to make a career change, but they're worried because they make a good salary and they worry a lot about that. And I remember having a client and he really wanted to start his own business, but he kept saying, I haven't saved enough. I haven't saved enough. I need to work for 5 more years or whatever. And I was like, what's the number? What's the number that you'll think is enough? And he couldn't answer. And I was like, if you can't answer, then there is no number that's enough. It's a feeling, right? You're chasing a feeling of security before you take a risk. But that doesn't really exist. And this idea of what is enough money is also a very subjective thing that most people don't even really sit down and think about what that personally looks like for them, which could be very different for you, very different for me, very different for my next door neighbor. People don't really sit down and think about that.
Yeah. And is that something that you help clients think through when they're thinking about that? You just shared this example of someone who wanted to make a change in their life, wanted to follow a dream, let's say, and was being held back by this. Because I think a lot of the times it's we want money to provide security, but it's uncertain.
Yes.
There are no guarantees, right?
Yeah.
Death and taxes are like the
Yeah.
guarantees that we have. But everything
Yes.
else, there is risk that we need to learn how to manage and embrace.
Exactly. Well, and I think, and we've all got money stories, right? From our childhood, from society, from all these things. And those money stories actually have nothing to do with how much money is actually in your bank account, right? It's really about understanding your own relationship with money and what that means, what it means to you, and not so much about the actual number. The number can make you feel safe or unsafe, but that doesn't actually mean you're safe or unsafe, to your point. Like, the world is not a secure place where everything is guaranteed, right? Even the most lucrative corporate career, you can be laid off tomorrow, right? That's not really even the safe path, right? And so what I do help people do is help them understand, like, what does success mean for them at this chapter of their life. That can change, right? You have kids, your kids grow up, your definition can change, but what is your definition of success right now? And why is that your definition of success? And how will you know what success looks like? And that's what I help them do. And obviously the financials is such a big part of that, because the work I do is around your career, which is for most people their main source of income, right?
Yeah. And seeing if you become an entrepreneur too, what will the income look like in the first few years? It's such a huge unknown, because you have a new product that you're testing, especially the product as a service that you're providing. There's so many different parts to this work. I know I've been at this is year 4. And I wouldn't have been able to know the path that I was going to take to get to where I'm at today. It's very unknown.
Yeah, it's very unknown. But it's also interesting, just to share a personal story. Like, for the whole first year that I was an entrepreneur, I hated the question of, like, how's your business going? I just hated it. I don't know. And it's a very nice question. People care. They want to, it's a very normal, benign question. What do you do for a living? And I hated it. And then I had a friend call me out on it. She goes, when they ask how your business is going, they're not asking how much money you're making. And I was like, oh, I am still tying how the business is going to the revenue, right? And then I took it one step further, and I was like, oh, I think they're asking, are you making as much money as you used to make in your corporate job? And it was like, and these are no words nobody said. This is how my brain was interpreting that question, right? And so I think it's just such an interesting thing when you become an entrepreneur, that money, your relationship to money in some way changes, because it's not just something that shows up in your bank account every 2 weeks. It's something you're going out and creating for yourself, right? Through selling your services or your products or whatever it is. And it's more up and down, right? That's the nature of entrepreneurship. And so it does, in some ways, for me at least, has shifted how I have to think about and my relationship with money in a different way. But I think when my friend called me out on that, I was like, it hit me. I was like, oh my God, you're so right. This is why I hate this question. And then I was like, what's wrong with me? But yeah, it's a constant journey.
One of the things that I'm hearing is that you were really prioritizing safety so much early in your career, because you grew up in an environment that had instability, financial instability, which is part of entrepreneurship. My parents were also entrepreneurs, and I also experienced the ups and downs of the market. And now you have embraced the risk. You're helping other clients see that the risk, grow their awareness of risk, of it just not being like the money side of it, but also the happiness, the contentment of it. And when I hear you talk about enough, I hear you say it's very subjective. Are there any exercises that you walk people through? How is that a focus of your work?
Yeah, I think what I really help folks do is really get clear on who is the person that they're trying to become. Who is future Diana, who's achieved all of your goals? What are your goals? Help people identify what their goals are, help people get past their judgments of it. One exercise I have my clients do that I learned from a coach that I had before Hannah Khan is just having people journal for 5 minutes a day to the question of, if anything's possible for me, what would I love? And people don't even stop and think about that. They often think about it through the lens of what's possible for them. And I try to open the aperture and be like, what would you love to do? Then we can layer on how to get there. But we limit ourselves to what's possible, and we pick what we would love from what's possible, right? Or what we think is possible. So first I have people open up the aperture and figure out what they would love and what their goals are. And then to help figure out what enough is who is Diana who's achieved all your goals? What does she act like? What does she think? Who does she interact with? What kind of car do you drive? And it's just helping you paint this future vision of your life. And what most people realize through these types of exercises of just figuring out the people that you admire and who you're trying to become is that, at least from a material perspective, a lot of people have what they've always wanted right now. And so they maybe have a certain baseline level of lifestyle that they want to maintain, but this striving for more and more is maybe not as necessary as they once thought, right? And so it's helping people that figure that out. What is the future vision that you have for your life? And some people might say, I want to fly in a private jet everywhere. Okay, great. That's fine. That's figure out how you can get there. But for most people, like 99% of people that I work with, at least, it's very much like their life doesn't look that different on a day-to-day basis. They just feel more satisfied in it. Or maybe they live in a little bit of a bigger house, or maybe there's some small things that they want to change, but it helps them realize that like they actually probably have more than enough right now.
Yeah, which is what I hear that you experienced in the ethnographic research that you were doing before.
Exactly. And it all ties back. I think it's just shifting people's mindset into realizing how much they have instead of focusing on everything they think they don't have.
Yeah. And one of the focuses of this podcast is really like, how do we bring money and social justice together? And I know that you worked very actively at a food bank where you were bringing your strategic vision skills. Can you talk a little bit more about how people can use their skills to move forward social justice?
Yeah, I think there's so many ways to get involved in any type of social justice initiative that you think is important. I got involved in food banks because at the time when I joined, I was working for a large like grocery store chain and realizing that even the lowest tier of the stores, there were people that couldn't afford it. And so I wanted to figure out how to create an ecosystem where everybody can meet their basic needs. And so I joined the board of a food bank. And for me, it's been a lot of board work that I've gotten involved in, right? It's a volunteer role, but I'm now the chair of the board of a food bank. But what I've realized through that work is that food insecurity is like such a complicated social justice issue, right? Like poverty which is really food insecurity is a symptom of poverty. And poverty is a very challenging social justice issue to untangle how to get to the root cause of poverty. And food banks, at least in Canada, I don't know the US, were created in the 1970s as a Band-Aid solution to high inflation. And now, 50 years later, they're just part of the fabric of the society, right? And it's why does that have to exist? And how can we untangle the reasons for high housing prices and low and high unemployment and all the challenges that new immigrants or other people face? Like, how do we change those to do it? And to me, it's become a fascinating, like, problem to try to unpack and solve. I'm not saying I've solved it. I have not solved it. It's but to basically be on the board of an organization that's real goal is to work themselves out of a job. Right? That's a unique way of viewing the world when the point of your organization is to work yourself out of a job, because it doesn't need to exist if food insecurity doesn't exist. But I think for anyone who wants to get involved, it's find a cause that you care about or you're even curious about. Maybe I didn't know all this stuff about food banks when I first joined. Find a cause you're curious about and volunteer. If you don't know where you want to start, like just pick an organization and go, because what I've found is the more you learn about any industry, and I think the social justice world is the same, like the more interesting it actually becomes, because you learn how complex it is. And you do get a satisfaction of helping to make things better for other people less fortunate than you in whatever way, resonates for you.
So is the food bank really focused on like policy changes? Because I'm thinking like, how do you make poverty go away?
So the food bank that I am on the board of, we do three things. So one is advocacy. So how do we work with government to drive policy changes to increase, it's like the welfare equivalent. It's not called welfare here, but like increase like the welfare rates or the disability rates that people get in our province. We do emergency food relief. So that's like the day-to-day delivery of what you'd imagine a food bank is, right? People come and they get free food and they do it. And then the third angle, which is actually really interesting that our food bank does, is very innovative, is social enterprise. And so we do things like we have a training program in our warehouse. So we will train folks for free. And we have a partnership with a big Canadian retailer where all the trainees are guaranteed a full-time job with benefits there. So there we're lifting individuals directly out of poverty by training them for free and giving them a funnel into a full-time employment as an example of some of the social enterprises. And we also provide low-cost food to other nonprofits, right, that we sell to them at a rate that they could never afford to buy for themselves. So what we've tried to do is, yes, policy is how you address poverty massive scale. And so we're working on that, but that takes the way immediately we're helping people lift without security is some of the programs that we have that actually like train and provide people with higher paying employment to lift individuals. It's obviously slow going. It's 10 or 20 people at a time, but still that's a massive change to those individuals' lives.
One of the things that I loved that you said is that as you volunteer, as you like decide on an area or listen to what area called the most, as you're volunteering in it, you become more and more aware of all the complexities. That becomes more interesting. You gain more skills. So I'm hearing you say just following your passion into an area is really where you can there's so many different places where we
there's so many different places. If you care about the environment, if you care about poverty reduction, if you care about LGBTQ, like whatever it is that you care about, trying to make better for people, like just get involved. And as you get involved, you'll figure out what parts you enjoy or you don't enjoy, or where you feel like you can personally feel like you're making an impact.
Yeah, and I had a conversation earlier this season in the podcast with Dorcas Chen Kozan, who talks about social justice for the sensitive soul, and also about how much like sensitive people may need to rest in addition to doing their social justice work. Is that something that you manage, like wanting to balance out how much work you can put out there versus how much downtime you need?
So that's my big goal for 2026 is like, I've historically been quite bad at balancing that. And I do too many volunteer roles. I do too many things in my business. I want to be there for all my kids' stuff. So the resting part I have not prioritized in most of my life. But in 2026, it's like, it's taking that concept of enough. Like, how do I know what enough is with my time? Right. And then prioritizing rest for myself more, because that's been an area that I'm not good at, I'll be honest.
One of the things that I think of, and maybe this would be helpful for you, is that we also are part of everything, right? We are also part of the social justice that we're working towards. And if I have a vision of people having enough food, enough housing, enough leisure time, enough rest, I get to include myself in that vision of people. I also am a person. And I think a lot of the times, as someone who's also very ambitious, it's important that I remember that like my well-being is connected to everything. So that I'm not just like constantly giving and pretending that I don't have any needs.
Yeah, I think that's so important, right? And I think for me, it's going from intellectually knowing that to embodying it, right? I feel like intellectually I'm aware of that, but it's about one thing I've been unpacking for myself, especially in this entrepreneurship journey, is I historically have equated being busy with feeling important in some way. And so I'm untangling those things. And I am enough exactly as I am. Right? Is like moving to that idea of enoughness, is I am enough exactly as I am. And it's not tied to how many clients I have, how full my inbox is, if I could go have a nap in the middle of the day, that doesn't mean I'm not enough. And so for me, my next web of untangling is this idea of busy and important.
Yeah. And I hear how you like had to pull apart the idea that like my income decides whether I'm enough or not, whether I'm being successful. And now I'm also hearing you question like that busyness.
Yeah, that's like the next one. Like, I feel like I've worked through the income stuff. Maybe not, I don't think anyone's ever done fully working through these things. But then in the next one, it's the busyness, right? And how a day spent reading is just as quote unquote successful as a day of back-to-back calls.
Yeah. And we're recording this the first full work week of 2026. And just like a little bit of sharing of my story. The last 2 weeks, I really slowed down. I must have worked maybe 15 hours in 2 weeks. It was lovely.
That's great.
And I had these like projects that I was going to get through. And I just could not get myself to do any other projects. I slept. I read 3 novels.
Yeah. Oh, that was me over the Christmas break. I had all this intention of doing all this like big thinking stuff for my business that I didn't do. And I like hung out with the kids and I rested, and that's okay. It's probably better. It's not just okay. It's better.
Yeah. And there's always this balance, right? Because now I'm thinking like, oh, if I had done those things, I wouldn't have to do them now.
Yeah.
And
it's just honoring that what your body needed for those 2 weeks was the rest.
And I think that's one of the parts of being an entrepreneur that's so different, because there's a portion of my work that I do that I contract for someone else. And I always know that, okay, here's my task. I do them. That's it. As an entrepreneur, the list of tasks and potential marketing things, potential things that I could explore is so endless, which is beautifully creative and also can be very exhausting.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that is the big difference is even when I was in the corporate world and I had a big team, like I also could delegate things to other people, right? Like I could be like, hey, we need to do this, but actually you're going to do this and you're going to come back to me in 2 weeks and tell me how it went. And now, right, it's, oh, I want to do all these things, but like, I guess I'm doing them, right? And so it's hard to make sure that you're prioritizing. That's a skill I'm still learning, is just prioritizing the things and letting go of the things that if they don't happen, it's okay.
Yeah, it's been such a pleasure to have you here, Christine. Thank you so much for sharing your story of like your own evolution in the corporate world and now as a coach. Where can people find you? How can people get to work with you?
Yeah, so if people can connect with me on LinkedIn, like Christine Farrugia, my name will be in the show notes, I think, and then or on Instagram at Coach with Christine would be the two best places to connect with me, and I'd love to connect with any of your listeners.
Yeah, and it'll definitely be in the show notes. Once again, thank you so much for taking the time to be here, and I hope you reach your intentions of rest and balance in 2026.
Thank you so much. It was great thanks for having me, Dana.
Christine reminds us that we often have more than enough right now, even as we're striving for more. She asks us to reimagine our relationship with success, money, and what makes a day well spent, away from what culture tells us to what our heart tells us. I love how Christine pointed out that we are part of the social justice we're working toward, which means our well-being, our rest, and our contentment matter too. Thank you for joining me on Highly Sensitive Money. I'm Diana Giselle Yanez, and I hope this episode helped you see how money and sensitivity can work together while honoring our interconnected well-being. We have the power to create a system where everyone's needs are met because nature is abundant. If you found value in today's conversation, please take a moment to leave a review and share this episode with someone who could benefit. Your support helps this message reach more people navigating their own financial journeys. A thank you goes to Mike Schul for the music and Juan Antonio Nunez for producing. For more resources on bringing money and social justice together, sign up for my monthly newsletter over at allthecolors.net. I also invite you to schedule a free 30-minute call where we can talk about money coaching, investment management, and all things money and social justice. Until next time, remember that your sensitivity and deep thinking is your superpower.